Hi everyone, welcome back to the Property Finance Podcast. And today, again, following the trend of frequently asked questions, one of the ones that we've had quite a bit recently is talking around leverage and people saying, well, what leverage shall I take? Shall I go for the maximum leverage? Shall I try and gear back a little bit? What's kind of my safest route? And the problem is from a broker's perspective, it's very, very difficult to answer that because a lot of it is down to personal preference and everything else. When it comes to mortgages, bridging, I would say you want to leverage yourself to the point where you feel safe. So especially on bridging finance, if you've got cash in the bank, use that as opposed to the bridging finance, because bridging finance is obviously a high risk form of finance. And if you can bring the leverage down on that, obviously it brings the risk down for you as well, brings the risk down for the lender, which makes them cheaper in the long run as well. When it comes to mortgages, I think a lot of people get disillusioned with, I'm just going to take the maximum leverage out of every single property and I'm just going to run my portfolio at 75% loan to value. Well, it works for some people, but when you see what we've seen over the last 3, 4, 5 years, however long it's been now, I feel like I've lost track a little bit. But what we've seen, especially over the last 3 years, where interest rates have gone from 0.1 up to 5.25, they're obviously now down to 5 at the point of recording this, but that is a significant interest hike to try and take on a portfolio that's max leverage. So what I would say is just keep in mind when you're going for mortgages, just try and build in a bit of that there so that you can kind of deal with, all right, we're maybe never going to see an interest hike quite as severe as what we've seen recently, but who knows? It could go one of two ways. So just try and build a little bit in there as well. So I think anywhere around kind of 65% is a pretty safe position to be. But obviously for some people, they just have to take 75%. When it comes to development finance, we pretty much get the question all the time of, I want to borrow the maximum that I can borrow. That's fine. That's understandable. But again, just keep in mind, if you've got your own cash, if you've got investors, it might be worth bringing them in to try and bring down that leverage on the development finance, because there's nothing worse than getting to an end of a deal and all of a sudden the GDV's come down or your build cost has gone up and all of a sudden you've got a development finance lender there that wants to repossess or do whatever they want to do, put you on default interest rates or whatever. If you've got some investor money in there, if you've got some of your own money in there and you've brought that leverage down, it just gives you a few more options with potentially you could turn around and say, well, look, I'm going to sell the whole thing off for 10% below market value or 15% below market value. I'm still going to make a profit because I've put my own cash in there and I haven't got quite as much development finance cost as maybe some other people would have. So I can take a bit of a hit on the GDV at the back end. It just gives you those options. And the problem with leveraging yourself to the max is in its simplest format, it doesn't allow for error. There is no allowance whatsoever for interest rate increases. There's no allowance for bill cost increases, which again, we've seen those over the last 3 or 4 years. Bill cost went up nearly double in some industries. So there's no room for that if you've gone for 70-75% loan to GDV. There's also no allowance for if the GDV comes down, because again, if you're at 75% loan to GDV, if the GDV comes down 5-10%, you're getting pretty squeaky. And especially if sales are slow, which again, over the last 3 or 4 years, they have been quite slow. Obviously, they're picking up a bit more now, but they have been slow in the past. And we just have to predict somehow with a crystal ball whether anything like that is going to happen again. And I think just trying to bring that leverage down a little bit just builds in some allowance for if bill costs go up, if GDVs come down, if timing is against you or whatever. So my simplest answer is when clients come to me and say, I want to borrow the maximum amount that I can, I'll always go back and say, are you sure? And that's where hopefully this podcast will help. Have a listen back, kind of question, are you sure? Are you sure you want the maximum leverage? And if you are, fine. As a broker, I take your instructions. I will go and do whatever you want me to do. But I'm always going to question why. And I think that's as long as you know why you want to take maximum leverage and as long as you've built in some contingencies as to what you're going to do if that maximum leverage is too much, then that's okay. And I will put my trust in you as the client that you understand the risks involved in taking that maximum leverage. But hopefully that helps. Hopefully it gives you a bit of food for thought. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next one.